This is TWiT.
We talked last week about the rumor that Microsoft was going to put another $10 billion into openAI.
Yeah, so Satya Nadella destroyed the ecosystem and flew in his private jet to Davos, and then he admitted that Microsoft was doing all those things we speculated about last week. But it was really interesting to hear him kind of spell it out, because it's kind of like a 3-point kind of a thing, right, or a strategy, right? So obviously, Azure is the place to go for AI. They announced some services there. They want to make the foundational models that resulted in chatgpt into platforms that anyone can build on top of. And they announced specifically they will make APIs for chatgpt. And then, of course, they're going to integrate AI across the stack. And this is the thing that, to me, is the most meaningful thing in the world. And it speaks to this frustration I've had with Microsoft over the past at least 10 years, which is that as the focus at the company has turned to the cloud, because that's what got them to the market cap they're at now, that's what reinvigorated their stock price after literally 15 years of it flatlining at $35. That's all they pay attention to. So every quarter they announce all their earnings. They don't want to talk about legacy. They don't talk about Office. They talk about Office a little bit. They don't talk about Windows. They don't talk about Xbox. And what I mean by that is, of course, they talk about those things, but there's no numbers. There's no hard numbers. It's all cloud. They invent this non-existent business that used to be commercial cloud. I forget the new name for that, but it's sort of this aggregation of things from across Microsoft that's all cloud related. And they can say, look at this. It's bigger than AWS. We're huge. We're big. We're cloud, And that kind of overemphasis on the cloud took away an emphasis that used to exist for the part of the company that I care about, which is the client, primarily Windows, but also all the things that kind of surround Windows in that ecosystem. And the thing that's exciting about AI to me is that it infuses across the stack. It's client and server. So if you're kind of an Azure guy and that's where you're at and that's all you care about, you know what? AI is going to transform Azure. There is no doubt about it. But for people like me who have been kind of sitting in the corner in the dark, for many years now, all of a sudden there's something exciting happening on the client. And I like something truly exciting, right? I can't, off the top of my head, like what was the last thing that was anything even close to this? Longhorn? It's been a long time. And Longhorn worked out great, so there's no reason to think this isn't going to work out great. This is the thing. This is the reason I think this AI stuff is so exciting, because it's something that can energize basically all of Microsoft. This will impact the entire company.
But specifically because of the consumer client side, like Microsoft's not great with consumers in general. I mean, one would argue the last time they've really pushed on anything for consumers, it was the Surface devices.
Yeah, you're right. Or maybe, I guess maybe Windows Phone, I guess, maybe, but yes, those were basically
that also, had a set of problems. I mean, Microsoft is all in on the cloud, has been in for a decade. And this is a product that needs cloud. So it sells into the modern mission very, very well. But I appreciate, that your angle is it's the consumer client that is the
my angle is it's everything. And that includes the consumer client, right? So, back in the day, Microsoft used to have this message when on-prem server and Windows were a thing, it was better together, right? This notion that, Windows is great by itself, whatever version we're talking, XP, whatever. But if you put it out there with server, that's even better, And this kind of speaks to that. It's this virtuous cycle where it can kind of float all the boats at Microsoft. So the last time Microsoft made what I would call an all-out effort on consumers was 20 years ago. This is back in the age of Windows Media Mattered and Plays for Sure and Media Center and all of that. So there was a huge push to reach consumers.
Remember Home Server too. I mean, that's all in that
Home Server was absolutely, of course. Yep. And for sure. And then Zune and, you can kind of follow the downward trajectory on this thing. But this is cool to me because it's going to, and by the way, as fun as that stuff might have been at the time, as fun as anything entertainment related is. I mean, honestly, I care a lot more about productivity. I care about kind of the grunt work of what a PC is all about. And I just feel like this has gotten short thrift in recent years. That the stuff we've been talking about since Windows 11 has come out, for example, is all about like rounded corners and surface level kind of nonsense. What does an icon look like? And oh my God, they're scrolling out with the search pill again. And it's like, okay, it's interesting on some level, but this is not what I would call deep computer science, you know? And
does the consumer want that?
Well, yeah, I think they do. And I think this speaks to the thing that got normal people excited about computers in the first place. Like there were always people like us, all three of us, who were technical and adopted computers at a very early age because we had this vision of something we could do with these things. You know, I, as a child walking around Sears, saw our Commodore 64 and imagined creating video games. You know, I had this very specific idea of this thing that I could possibly do with this machine. I was really excited by that. But then I have these friends who I consider normal people, right? They're into things like sports and, you know, they're just normal people. And I have very distinct memories of the times when those people came to me and said, I'm going to get a computer, you know, where something had happened that made computers valuable to them. Right. And, you know, for me, it was in 1980. For them, it was in 1999 or 2005 even, or whatever year. And I feel like this is going to enhance those people's lives in the same way that internet access did or whatever those capabilities might be. Meaning, you can open up something like PowerPoint or Word or Excel and not be an expert in those things and have it help you create something meaningful and good, which I know a lot of people are super afraid of. And it's right to question all this stuff. But I think we talked about this, the basic capabilities you get in whatever that PowerPoint designer or whatever is. Like, I'm not very good at designing PowerPoints. I have this message. I have to deliver a presentation. I don't do this a lot. Like, how do I make something that people will want to look at that's interesting? I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not good with words or whatever it might be.
And if you stuck the chatgpt interface over top of that, so that literal verbal expression was the thing, you know, and now it fires up the right apps and so forth.
That's right.
Like what I love about this is just in this past few months when both Google and Amazon have said, you know, this voice thing's a waste of time.
I know.
It's cost us a fortune. It's done nothing.
Yeah.
And here's exactly Microsoft saying, you know, the rebirth of Cortana, I hope they don't use the name, but what if every Windows device,
I'm fascinated that you just said that because I literally was working on an editorial about, actually, let me just look it up, about voice assistants and how they were going to be in fact, this is probably not, I probably wouldn't have gone with this, but I called it at the time a diminished voice. And the idea was that voice assistants, smart assistants, whatever you want to call those things, would be the next platform, the next wave, like Microsoft said. Yeah. And how that didn't happen, and how one of the things that came out of this past year that's causing all these layoffs is Google and Amazon, the two big players in this market, two biggest players, basically are cutting a lot of the resources to those parts of the company because those things have just siphoned billions of dollars away. Yeah. And it's one of those, they're like Washington Post or New York Times or someone wrote an article about what do people actually use these devices for, the Echoes or whatever. And they use them for like playing a certain kind of playlist, or they want to play a little stupid game, or they, maybe it's an older person, they'd like just to have interactions. They talk about what's the weather, it's not, when Microsoft started adding Cortana to Windows, it was like, guys, what are you doing? No one is going to sit down. Not literally no one, because there are people who have accessibility needs and so forth around that, of course. But I mean, most people are just more efficient, mouse, keyboard, touch, whatever, to go from A to B. It just didn't. It's like this isn't.
This strikes me more as a discoverability solution. This is tooltips on steroids. Instead of hovering your mouse to try and figure out what to click on, the fact that you can, using very conversational interfaces, say, I'm trying to do X, and have that tool say, well, here's what I've got to help you do X.
I bet everyone listening to the show or watching it has at some point, and I will tell you, this has happened to me probably 1,000 times or more, set up a Windows computer of some kind. Well, what would be Windows 10 or Windows 11. This happens with the Mac too. And it takes a long time. So you leave it, you go do something else in the house. And then all of a sudden you hear something talking somewhere else in the house. Hi, it looks like you're trying to set up Windows. You can use, it just starts blaring out some, whatever discussion it is about whatever. And it's like, I get it. I get what you're trying to do. This was never going to become the primary way that we interacted with almost anything. There are absolute use cases for it. There are very interesting scenarios around driving a car and you want to, say something, whatever. Again, people with accessibility, older people, whatever it might be. But as far as it like being the next wave of computing, I think this last year was the comeuppance for that. It's fascinating, and this is what you just said, and this is I love this because this was in my brain. It is absolutely fascinating how this openAI stuff Dall-E, ChatGPT, etc., just happened right as that happened. Like, it was like, oh, remember we all thought that was the future? That was dumb. And then this other thing happens. You're like, holy crap, this is amazing. And this is a
Newton versus iPhone play, right? This is, okay, you built this thing. It hasn't done what you wanted it to do. You know, you couldn't find a market to it. People are frustrated by it. And now here's another incarnation that on the surface of the base description, it's just a voice interface, seems the same, except that the interaction is so different.
I mean, there are AI voice things that are very interesting. You have a Pixel, I know, Richard, and I do too. And I know Leo has certainly used them if he's not using one full time. But they have these incredible voice interaction things they can do with holding a call or, say, hey, the lines, or navigating through a menu. You normally have to type numbers and stuff like that stuff. Right. That stuff is that an extension of like a Google Assistant kind of feature, or is this in fact an early version of what is really an AI type of situation, which Google, Amazon, Microsoft are just right there in place to make that kind of stuff happen?
And I'm just, again, for the record, I hate the AI term because it's always associated with Hal and trying to kill everybody. These are better, these are better conversational engines for interfacing with a machine. Right. We have a discovery problem in these systems. They have too many capabilities. You know, you go look at what you get for M365 for home. What do I do with all this stuff? And the funny thing is, we talked about this earlier, how Bill Gates wanted one app because he was trying to address that problem too. That it's like people don't know where to go. But what if you simply started with, what would you like to do? Well, I need to make a presentation for work.
Are you saying, Richard, where would you like to go today? Is that what you just said?
Yeah. I thought it was Microsoft Mom. Where do you think you're going today?
Yeah, exactly. It's a slightly different tone on that one.
Yeah.
Hey, we should talk Linux. It's the operating system that runs the internet, but your game consoles, cell phones, and maybe even the machine on your desk. But you already knew all that. What you may not know is that TWiT now has a show dedicated to it, the Untitled Linux Show. Whether you're a Linux pro, a burgeoning sysadmin, or just curious what the big deal is, you should join us on the Club TWiT Discord every Saturday afternoon for news, analysis, and tips to sharpen your Linux skills. And then make sure you subscribe to the Club TWiT exclusive Untitled Linux Show. Wait, you're not a Club TWiT member yet? Well, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and sign up. Hope to see you there.